Sorry. Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the weekly seminar series at the Dahdaleh Institute for Global Health Research. My name is Professor Mary Wiktorowicz, and I'm the acting director of the Dahdaleh Institute for Global Health Research. So today we're delighted to have Harvey Skinner and Susan Harris host the third in their series of connecting with our Indigenous communities in Northern Canada. So I will hand it over to you, Harvey, for the next steps, to introduce our guests.
Thank you. I'm just going to share screen. Everybody can see this okay? Okay, our tradition is we'll start with a land acknowledgement, and we appreciate that we're going to be speaking from Toronto here in Toronto, but in other lands, there are different traditions. So I just want to recognize different traditions of Indigenous peoples and in the different lands. I've asked today to have our two interns, Laura, Rosa, and Shamim Samadi to lead us in the territorial land acknowledgement.
Thank you so much, Harvey. Hi, everyone. My name is Shamim. I'm working as a global health intern with Harvey and the team, and I wanted to provide our territorial land acknowledgement today, and thank you all for joining. Here at York University, we acknowledge its presence on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. The area known as Toronto has been taken care by many of the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory is subject of the Dish with One Spoon, One Plum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. I'm going to pass it off to Laura, and she's going to share a reflection with us.
Thank you, Shamim, for reading the land acknowledgement. I just wanted to say that as we approach the end of this seminar series, I think it's really important that we take some time to reflect on the insights that we've gained from the previous sessions, as well as the insights we'll gain today from Jennifer's wonderful session, and how these fit in more broadly with our relationship with the land, as well as those who have long called this land their home. I'm sure that we can all appreciate the value of land acknowledgements, but I think it's also crucial that we truly take the time to reflect the land that we occupy, its history, and the relationships that exist within it. As a non-Indigenous settler myself, who's lived on the land known as Toronto for the past 6 years, I now more than ever feel that it's my duty to acknowledge the privilege that I hold being a white European settler in this settler colonial state that's Canada. By now, we've all seen and heard how colonialism has impacted and continues to impact many Indigenous nations, and how that impact is exacerbated by the climate crisis, which implies that addressing this and tackling this crisis is a major part of our reconciliation efforts. And I think we've also established that Indigenous knowledge and ways of knowing traditions are an integral part of fighting climate change, which really emphasizes the importance of this seminar series of listening to the North and amplifying Indigenous voices. So wherever you're joining this meeting from, I invite you to also reflect on the land that you occupy, the treaty holders of that land, and your position within it. And I hope that these past sessions and that the session today provide value to your reflection and that they help you inspire to work towards a more sustainable and more equitable future.
Thank you, Miigwech, to Laura and Samadi. And our this series is brought by the Wellness Impact Lab here at the Dahdaleh Institute. Our mission is very bold. It's healing ourselves, healing others, healing our world, and really means we need to love our planet. And this image captures that so beautifully. This is our team. I'll just go through first name. So it's me and my partner, Susan, we're the co-leads, and you've already met Shamim and Laura. They're our global health interns, and Jennifer will be leading the session today, and Sarah led the major session last week, so they're helping to co-lead this series. And we also have Katie Newman and Christy as members of our core team. So that's the people behind our lab. This is the third in our series, listening to the Canadian North, and I know that many of you, most of you have been involved in the first two, so really welcome back. it's been really exciting for us to organize this. You have the opportunity to get a certificate of participation. This is what it looks like. It's a digital certificate. So all you need to do is just send me an email, and we have a very simple application form. So that's my email address. And this gives it again, hskinner@yorku.ca, and that's my phone number if you want to text. But I encourage everyone to opportunity to get this certificate. So to provide some inspiration for today's session, I want to just give a reading from Ben Okrie, Nigerian storyteller. We live stories that either give our lives meaning or negate it with meaninglessness. If we change the stories we live by, quite possibly we change our lives. So that's our aim today, is to learn the stories from the North that Jennifer and her great set of colleagues that were leading us today and help us change our lives. So Jennifer, I met in the late 90s, and she and her partner, Michael, were just starting taking it global. So we've been engaged ever since. And for the last number of years, she's also been the lead of Connected North. She is one of the most amazing agents of change that I know. And it's just marvelous to have Jennifer involved with this series and now to take the lead in doing this session. So I turn it over to you, Jennifer.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here alongside three colleagues who I'll be introducing during this time together. I just got back from Northwest Territories last night, and I'll share a little map of some of the communities that were visited. Today is a good day, and just as I was listening to the land acknowledgement, I'm also here on Treaty 13 territory, and I'm wearing a little ring with a wampum shell that I purchased from a Haudenosaunee artist, and thinking about that Turo wampum teachings. I'm also holding a tobacco as an offering for what will be shared today, which is part of the protocol for the Anishinaabe teachings, as we'll be asking Waukomaun to share a song, and also Eileen Beaver, who's our elder, she's a Dene and Cree, and it's also some teachings I've asked for her to share today, and Jennifer Manitowabi on our team, who will be sharing a little bit on the topics that were outlined. We heard in the first seminar series some Inuit speakers, and we opened up with the Kuluk, which was incredible with Bernice, and we heard Inuit perspectives. And today I was invited to speak about the role of Connected North, introducing the organization and its goals, to talk about technology as an ally, leveraging technology to promote well-being among students in northern remote Indigenous communities, collaboration with communities, strategies for effective partnership, impact stories, and hopes for the future. And as a non-Indigenous person, so I am the granddaughter of Italian immigrants on both sides, maternal and paternal side, and I am a graduate of York University. I completed both my undergraduate degree and my master's degree at York. I started the organization at 19 as an undergrad. So for the undergraduate students watching, take note of your ideas and your passions and the challenges. And I've been on a journey of change making. I first learned about the residential schools in a cultural geography course. I had a Black professor that asked us to write papers about cultural genocide, and he suggested that we could look at different regions of the world, or we could look at Canada, and I didn't understand what he was talking about. So I began my search into understanding the history of the residential schools, and I'm grateful that he challenged me to look at that aspect of Canadian history. And I took that initiative, and that was in 1999. So I was able to be exposed to a lot of things that it seems that a lot of Canadians are just coming to learn in more recent years. And I am grateful for being invited to learn at that time in my life. And I'm very grateful for those that have taught me so much about intergenerational healing and well-being, because I've always been very passionate about the role of technology in supporting well-being. And we've done that throughout the work of taking it global. Connected North is a program that came to our organization in 2015. It was after my first trip to Nunavut. And That's when I heard our current Governor General, the Honorable Mary Simon, back when she was president of Inuit Tapiriit Kanatami, she was challenging those of us in the South. She was giving a presentation at an event. What can we do to address the high suicide rates in the North, as well as the attendance rates? And they were using video conferencing technology. So there's these high definition telepresence units in classrooms, and we've helped to grow this program over the past 8 years. Waukomaun's been alongside, and I'll be inviting him to share just in a moment here. But just so you can understand that Connected North uses two-way video conferencing for kindergarten up to grade 12 students in northern remote communities. When the program came to our organization, there were 5 schools. Now we service 160 schools. And that bison looked me in the eye just last week while I was on my drive to Salt River First Nation in Fort Smith. So here's a map of where the schools are located. And last school year, 6,560 unique sessions, about 40 minutes in length. It links to different subject areas: science, math, social studies, health, language. We had 900 unique teachers booking last year, and there on October 4th, our 10-year anniversary, I'm sitting at a table with elders involved in the program, Waukomaun, at the podium, speaking to Lieutenant Governor and Her Excellency, the Governor General, the Honorable Mary Simon, to help mark 10 years of Connected North. And so since today is Valentine's Day, I'm wearing my heart. And I asked if Waukomaun would be willing to share some teachings about the heart, O'Day, a little snippet of what he might share with students. He's also a content provider, and just to share his reflections on how this program supports well-being. And instead of me just explaining it, walking alongside with humility. The one last thing I want to say, just because I was asked in the early days of taking it global, my friend's father, a cardiologist, he said, "Your work, it's heart work. Can you come speak to my staff at the hospital?" He's one of the top cardiologists. And he said, "The work you're doing, it's in helping people have a healthy heart." And I just wanted to share that because when I hear Waukomaun speak, he reminds me of that. And, we're talking to people in the faculty of health. And sometimes we think the heart is just physical, but through teachings from Waukomaun and others, I've learned so much about that connection. So Waukomaun, over to you. Miigwech.
Miigwech, Jennifer. Bojo, Waukomaun Indigenous cause, Wissahickon and Donjaba, Giguna Dodem, Tekaronto and Dow. My name is Waukomaun. I am Ojibwe from Wissahickon First Nation. My community is just a few hours north of Toronto. It's an island on the eastern shores of Georgian Bay on Lake Huron. And today I'm connecting all the way from Toronto. I'm really grateful that I get to be here and share a little bit about my culture, my identity, and some of the teachings, as well as the importance and the impact that Connected North has on the communities that we work with and serve. I want to say miigwech, Jennifer, for inviting me into the space as well to share. And in terms of, talking about the work that we're doing with Connected North, I serve as a Connected North Indigenous Education coordinator. So I serve many schools across the country in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Ontario. And so I help coordinate and set up virtual sessions for virtual learning programs and sessions for students. But I also have the opportunity to connect and be a role model and a content provider or a guest speaker to those communities. And so I'm grateful that I get to share a little bit about my gifts with you. And when I get to connect, some of the messaging that I love to share with the young people is that each and every one of us has a gift. That's what I understand for my community and in our teachings. We all have something unique to bring here into creation and to share with one another. And as community, we hold each other up and we lift each other up. And so today I want to share a little bit about a little snippet from one of my sessions. I call it the sound of the heartbeat. Now, in Anishinaabe in the Ojibwe language, we call our heart Ode. So if you want to say that out loud to yourself, wherever you're joining from, say Ode. That is heart. Now the drum in Anishinaabe, the way we say it, in my community is Ode Wegan. Ode Wegan. Ode is heart. We is a sound, and egan is to make it. So it's to make this thing sound like the heartbeat. So I'm going to perform a song for you that utilizes that connection to the heartbeat. And it's a really important connection, because we have all been connected to that heartbeat sound. We all carry our heartbeat within ourselves, but before we came into the lodge of life, our mothers carried us in her womb, and we were connected to her heart, her heartbeat. We were connected to her. Whatever she ate, she nourished us. She kept us safe inside of her, and we had that unconditional love from our mother and our parents. And so that's a really important teaching about what the drum offers us, and it reminds us of those teachings and those gifts from our loved ones. And so with that, I'm just going to make a quick adjustment to my audio so that it doesn't distort, and then we'll get into the song. If you want to follow along, you're welcome to follow along at home. You can do so by just sitting back, relax, listening. You can also, tap and follow along with the drum beats. You can tap your foot. If you feel like dancing, you can dance in your seat. And if you really feel so inclined, you're welcome to get out of your seat and dance however you feel. There's no right or wrong way to dance. Here we go. All right, miigwech. So in that song, we use that heartbeat style of drum, and when we typically play that song, it's usually at social gatherings, and we usually do what's called a round dance. So many people will come together, they'll form a circle, and they'll hold hands, and we'll dance in a clockwise direction. And I think that's just really important, just talking about that connection, that human connection, and the importance of community coming together. And even in our communities, we talk about, I certainly grew up hearing it, and we had pictures and shirts and stuff like that made up at our school that said, keep the circle strong. So that's us as a community. We need to, like I said earlier, hold each other up, uplift each other, and support one another. And just even with me being able to be, a content provider, or even having many of the other folks that connect with Connected North, the way that it impacts students and their well-being, their physical well-being, their spiritual well-being, their emotional well-being, their social well-being, These programs that we can offer them all contribute to that. Connected North isn't we're not there to take the place of teachers. We're there to support the learning that is going on in the classroom. And students will often have those aha moments, during the session, or maybe it's the next day or a few days later, or maybe it's somewhere down the line. They'll say, that's amazing. Okay, that's what so-and-so was talking about. Connected North provides that education that can be a catalyst for, continued learning, or to spark the topic that they're about to get into, or it can be used as something that will maybe even used on a test later on down the line. And so it's really amazing. But we get to connect with these young folks and connect them with amazing role models, like I said earlier. And we want to be able to bring in Indigenous role models, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis role models, so that those students that we're connecting with, those communities that we serve that are First Nations, Inuit, Métis, they can see themselves reflected in the content. They can see themselves. There's somebody on the screen right now that has that comes from a community just like mine. Maybe they have the same lived experience. And look we're seeing people in positions of success. And they maybe share moments of challenges or hardship, but due to their determination, their perseverance, their hard work, relying on their power of their culture and identity, they have achieved some success in their life, and they're able to share that. And we have some amazing role models who are coming in, sharing about culture and identity. They're sharing their art, they're sharing their gift. And that's what I really like to focus on, especially when I connect with young people, like I said earlier, is focusing on their gifts and empowering them. Through our program, we have the opportunity to empower these young people and their voices, and give them access to opportunities through the access of technology. And if we were to send students on a field trip to the South, the cost might be astronomical. And so we're able to bridge that gap by now bringing in a guest speaker virtually into their classroom to have those connections, to have those experiences, whether it be with a zoo or a museum or an aquarium, that they wouldn't have necessarily had the opportunity to now. And now they have an access to an expert that is able to, facilitate that learning in their classroom and, amplify the voice of the teacher that's supporting them. And so there's so many different ways, but that we support these young people. But I often reflect back to my own personal experiences as a young person growing up in my own First Nation community. And my most memorable and cherished memories are those field trips that we had, those guest speakers that came into our classroom, those teachers that supported us and shared their gift with us and their love for teaching and sharing their knowledge. And later on in my life, I had those aha moments, speaking with my friends and saying, wow, remember when so-and-so came into our class? Remember when Fred came into our class and played guitar for us? That was so much fun. And I really appreciate all those moments. So with that, I think that's what Jennifer wanted me to share in that first part, and then the talking points. If I do have the opportunity to come back, I look forward to sharing more with you in a bit. Miigwech.
Thank you so much, Waukomaun. Yeah, that was a perfect introduction, and also gives people a sense of also what might be included in a session. And I know your story also as a leader in your community, and we can talk more about that later as well, perhaps. But just with the drum in your own community, you're such an incredible role model. And Waukomaun is booked a lot, and also books many others. So I'm going to now introduce our elder Eileen Beaver, and I'm going to share a map of where we were last week. Before I pass the mic. So we drove together, so Salt River First Nation in Fort Smith, and then we went to Denenuk Kwe First Nation in Fort Resolution, which she explained to me was a historic gathering place of many, many nations, even pre-contact. And then Katlodeche First Nation in Hay River, and then Degagoti First Nation. Two of the communities that we spent time in were evacuated, and then we did drive through Enterprise, which was burned down due to the wildfires in the summer. And I know that part of this talk is also really trying to understand some of the impacts of climate change The theme that we'll be speaking to is how does Connected North support student learning and well-being? And this is a photo from last week where Eileen painted birch bark trees with one of our Métis content providers, Connie, and we were there alongside the students. And it was actually the first day at PWK Secondary School with some new teachers. So some of the new teachers at the school also joined us. So it was really fun for them to get to experience the program. And I just have this slide up, Eileen, if you want to speak to any of these, but I don't need to keep them on, but just people can sort of see some of the program in action. And I'd now like to welcome you to share your reflections on how does Connected North support learning and well-being among students. And thank you so much for being our elder. For a year and a half, she's been with us every meeting, every week. And last week was our first time together actually in person. So it's really an honor to have you with us today. And I look forward to hearing what you have to say. Merci Cho.
Merci. Eileen Beaver Sulye, Danino Coin, in Hat Okulu Tabachanaster, no. Hi, my name is Eileen Beaver. As though you see Irene on top, that's my legal name. My mother and father had named me Eileen, but the nuns put Irene. So when I first got on with Connected North, I just put Irene, my legal name. I'm also known as Chachala, tip of a beaver tail, because that's when I was quite young. That's all I would eat would be the tip of the beaver tail. So they called me Chachala and Tatinzekwi. They also call me Tatinzekwi, which means that I am a white woman. Mainly because of my heritage. I'm both Cree and Dene, but on my father's side, I'm Irish and French. And so my family, we come from Treaty 8 Adhesion 4. And there are 4 adhesions in Treaty 8. Treaty 8 was signed 30 years after Treaty 7. And where you see Salt River First Nation and Deninoque and Hay River, that's part of Treaty 8. And Katlodeche, not Katlodeche is in Hay River, Fort Providence, and up that way is Treaty 11. That was signed in 1921. Northwest Territories is around the Great Slave Lake. It's, I think, one of the 7 Great Lakes in the world. And on the south side, where we have the Dene Métis Inuit, but it's mostly Dene and Cree in the southern part, Salt River First Nation, and Smith Landing, which is in Alberta. We're right at the border of Alberta. And Connected North, when I first got on with Connected North, I was honored after a few months, after about 6 or 8 months, to be asked to become an elder with Connected North. And what I love about Connected North is that it brings more opportunities for students to get to see other people coming in, and I guess I have so much to say, and my heart and my head is just going on. I could hear my elders saying, Eileen, speak with your heart. And that's how we were taught all the time, to speak with our heart, because speaking with our heart is speaking with our spirit. Speaking with our mind is speaking with our ego. And sometimes our ego tries to get more than our heart would, especially when there's so many things to see and do. But by encouraging, and I know that the small communities in the Northwest Territories, especially the Dene communities, all of the Northwest Territories, we call it Denende. meaning land of the Dene. And the Cree people came in the 1700s after the peace treaty was made between the Dene and the Cree. And they came, and my husband is Cree. And they know they're Cree Nehiwan. And they're very proud people, but when they're asked where you come from, they always say Dene de, land of Dene. And they call themselves Dene too, meaning that Dene in our language, it means people. And acknowledging the land, the geographical area of our land, and that. I asked my father-in-law at one time, why they don't, they don't say that they are Nahuatl. And he said, we are Nahuatl. He said, Nehuan. We speak Cree, he said, and we are Cree people who are very, very proud people, but we honor the Dene, he said, because we are sharing the land in their territory. And he said at one time the Dene territory went all the way up to Manitoba. And he said it was a vast land. And so he said, be proud of who you are and where you come from. He said, and then it reminded me when the treaties were made, our grandfathers said that they wanted us to walk in two worlds. And if you look at our dictionary, I don't have it with me, but a lot of the Dene dictionaries, they have a lady walking with one pair of moccasins high top and the other pair modern shoes, to show that we're walking in the two worlds. And in that two worlds, we are always told not to be above the other, one or the other. Because when our treaties were made, we were told that we were to learn from each other equally. And by walking together equally, we're not above one another. And so that's how most of the people in the Northwest Territories look at Den and De. Meaning that non-Aboriginal people, they come from here in the north, they are also Dene, because they come from the Northwest Territories. And they always say that, when you're a Canadian, or especially when you're from the Northwest Territories, because you can bump into a mannequin and apologize and say, excuse me. And when we're shopping not just in one cart, but we have 4 or 5 carts coming down the road. In that manner, I guess what I'm trying to get at is that our students are very artistic. They are very wanting, like thriving for knowledge and that, but they want to be so much a part of what it is down south, and what they think through their minds, what down south living is all about. And but really they don't really know, except for when they go shopping, maybe to as far as Edmonton or Saskatoon. Not very often do they go up to Saskatoon unless they're going to universities and that. So by having Connected North coming into the schools, coming into the classroom, it gives them more vision from the heart and not from the mind. And that's what I love about Connected North. It increases knowledge, enlightenment, and knowing that, like Waukomaun said, that, like sometimes he would think about when someone came into their class, and that aha moment could be, years later. And even this song he sang today, my heart felt like it was opening to his beat. And it's a medicine song because it's a heart song. And he repeated the same over and over. And as he's repeating it, I felt that my heart tightening and opening and like awakening and the beat. And I felt that beat coming back, almost like as if it was awakening me again. And I'm 68 years old. And I want to thank you for that, because it really made me look at my heartbeat and my heart. And before then, I was wondering, what do I talk about? What do I say? What like that would help me speak from my heart. And to have you sing, it actually just flowed. I'm listening to my elders right now, my ancestors. They're speaking to you through me, and they're telling me to speak from my heart. And you know what? Being Valentine's Day, it really fits. They say not one thing happens for no reason. And today's is speaking from the heart. When we went to Fort Smith, and we were there, and the teachers were doing the painting, I watched the students, because that's the school I taught. That's the school I taught from grade 7 to grade 12. And it was not only the art class, but the Cree and the Dene class came in, and they also participated within that. And it really filled my heart, because it's a part of sharing. It didn't say like, I booked this, and it's not for you. You stay out, like you do your own, yours is coming up next, or anything like that. But the doors opened, and I just felt that warmth, the warmth of the students sitting together, mingling together, painting together, and coming up with beautiful pictures. My picture that I was holding, I was wondering why it was so bright at the bottom and dark on top. And as I was watching it, I was thinking, I guess that's how the birch trees, we say in Dene, must have looked at the fire, when the cloud, like that darkness was coming in, and then that fire at the bottom. And I thanked it, and I looked at the picture as I was holding it up just now, and I looked at it and I thought, thank you. It really made me appreciate and be grateful for all the medicines that a birch tree would give us. They gave us tools. They allowed us to make snowshoes. They allowed us to make dog sleds. They allowed us to make drums with it. They allowed us to take the syrup and make birch syrup, just like maple syrup. And it gave us medicines too, because it's an antibiotic and antifungal. And it helped clean and cure my, any type of infections. And then I looked at it, and I thanked it for all the work and the gifts that it gives us. And I prayed while watching myself, holding that picture up, saying, please come back. Please come back. We need you. And I'm sure that the students, when they see things like that and opportunities for learning with other people coming into their class, it just enlightens. And that's what I love about Connected North. I think when I was teaching, and if I had known about Connected North, I'm sorry, I had to, I will never get nervous. My nose runs and my feet smell, so I'm just kidding. But when we went to Fort Res, watching them jig, and while this young lady was teaching the jigging, they were so anxious to show her their jigging, because their teacher was teaching them the jigging steps, and they had the certain steps that the Connected North was teaching a different set of steps for them. And they did the steps and everything, and then they wanted to be their turn right away. And they just they just went and danced, and watching them dance the jigging, it again, like how involved they were, not thinking that the young lady who is teaching the jigging is on Zoom and on this big screen. They even moved closer to the screen, wanting to be closer to her. And I thought how beautiful it was to see these little they were grade twos, right? And they were they were dancing like their feet was like they're gonna blow out their moccasins. They all had their moccasins, they had their little Métis sash on, and a lot of the kids that were there who were using the Métis sash were treaty and non-status. But they were so proud, they were so proud because it was part of their community, part of their culture, and and they weren't taught to say, like, you only be proud of being a treaty Indian or a Métis or an Inuit. We had a couple of Inuit students there too that and they were just dancing away. And they were showing the community spirit. They were showing their community spirit. And then when we went to Hay River, there again, the students were much older. They came in, they did their Zoom, and they were so right into it. So right into it that when there were a group of young boys that were falling behind, other students went and helped to catch up. And I thought, like, I looked at that and I was so proud of them. I was so proud of them because they looked, and this young lady who got up and went to the group of three young boys who were falling behind because they were chatting and not listening and following instructions. I know, because when I'm knitting, I can't follow instructions. I have to learn through my kinesthetic learning, and that's by seeing and feeling and touching and listening is kind of like a skill, I think, that they're still learning. But this young lady went to them, and she went and she just helped them, like, and then she came back. And the boys were doing their task, and they were weaving, and they were doing their task, and they really, it was, no, the first one was weaving, and the second one was painting, right? And even that painting too was good, like they really enjoyed it. So when I see that in person, and I see how they are connecting, and they're being connected from the northern communities to the south, and seeing that they're way up in Treaty 8 area, in the north side, the farther side of Treaty 8. And this lady is coming, or someone is coming from Saskatoon, or from Toronto, or from other places, and they see these other people, and they say, well, they aren't just like us, and they're making connections. And then I further think of them and think, when they get to the universities, they would have a lot more tools than they would just being in a small community. And they're not just thinking how it could be out there, because out there is coming to them, and they're not using their head, although they should be in the schools, but they're also using their heart, and their heart is guiding their mind, their head. And so their ego is not overcompensating what the heart should be doing. I hope I'm not taking up too much of my time, but sometimes Jennifer has to do something to let me stop talking. And thank you so much for allowing me to come in and be a part of your group today. Masicho.
So much, Masicho. That was just lovely reflections on our time together last week, and everyone called her auntie everywhere we went, and she had relations everywhere, and it was we felt like we were like homecoming with the queen, like traveling with you, Eileen. And you're just so loved, and it was so special to meet many of your family members, and like witnessing the growth of the students and the teachers. And I'm going to be introducing Jennifer Manitowabi, that wanted to highlight our program principles, our guiding principles with Connected North. Can you all see my screen? Yeah? I don't know why. I just want to make sure you can see it.
Yeah.
Awesome. And yeah, our guiding principles as a program are relationship building, so building trust with students, educators, communities, demonstrating respect, humility, and transparency. Empowerment through role models, Waukomaun talked about that. Having culturally relevant content, incorporating a diversity of voices, adapting expectations, and thinking beyond the classroom. So I just wanted to touch upon our program principles. And this is a photo in Lac Seul First Nation. Jennifer took us to her community on a trip we had a few years ago. There's another photo I had, which it's funny, it's not showing, but it's from her jingle dress sessions. Jennifer is another school lead on our team. She also is a content provider, and she is an incredible leader. She's also working on her Ph.D. And I said, oh, do you want to share what you're working on for your Ph.D. with York University? So whatever you want to share today, Jennifer, the floor is yours. Thank you for joining us.
Miigwech. So yes, Jennifer Manitowabi, Indigenous cause, and I come from Lac Seul First Nation, and I'm setting a timer for 5 minutes. So when we hear that little sound, we will know. All right. So yes, as Jennifer said, Lac Seul First Nation it is one of the largest land bases in Ontario. So you guys are in a large province, and I am in a First Nation that has the largest land base. And so we hold great respect. We make decisions in ways still, we visit all of our members often on reserve when we make decisions, and it's a long process. And here I am working for Connected North, and the pace is quick. It is very different. I live on a First Nation, and I remember living in an urban setting. I remember living in the city of Thunder Bay, coming home to my community, and I would still be like, okay, quick, what's happening next? Let's go. And then it would get me till Sunday, when I was ready to return to the city and live my urban life, that I would be like, oh, right, yep, just go with the flow. And I would get back to the city. I would be purchasing groceries for the week. And the tiller in the grocery store would be looking at me like, what's wrong with you? You don't have your debit card ready. You're not like, you're taking too much time almost, right? So I would fall into community pace and then get back into the city, and I'd be like, oh, I'm again out of my world, right? So I would have to switch gears very quickly. And I've always kind of lived this life of, academics and community mindfulness. So, and I give credit to my mom for that. She brought us up in the city thinking that our academic achievements, there would be greater opportunity. And then, very near the end, she told me, go as high as you can, my girl, with education. Go as high as you can. And to me, that was a doctorate. And so when I was early in my university years, I, kind of had this question and look about, oh, why is it non-Indigenous professors teaching me Indigenous studies? And my professor said to me, because we can't find enough Indigenous folks with PhDs. And I thought, well, I can be one. So that was a long time ago, and I continued my journey. I went and did my master's. Eventually, I worked as a principal. I worked as an administrator. I went most recently to a fly-in remote community. That was my last principalship before coming to Connected North. And I lived the demands of those communities and those students and my fellow teachers. And, you know, we just lost a school in the North, and every day, you know, things happen, and fire took that building. And so they called me up nearly the same day and said, Jennifer, we know you do virtual learning. What can we do to get our students to not be afraid, and our staff? And I'm like, but there's a process. I'll send an email request that you're reaching out to Connected North for support for that situation. And, you know, we don't know until we ask. So let's ask, let's put the call out there. So the demand is great, right? The crisis is huge. And I always want to come at it with a message of hope, right? So in the very least, I could turn them to our fireside chats and say, you know, have your students look at these role models and see what good folks are doing with, you know, so there are some resources I could point them to quickly and have them take up. But in my PhD journey, I so far have noticed that there are, you know, when I type in virtual learning, dissertations have been written about it, 130. But then when I narrow the search to First Nations, and I narrow the search to elementary schools, and I narrow the search to virtual learning, then I'm sitting with 20 articles, right? So reading the articles, right? I'm reading, you know, from scholars. And originally I wanted to talk about how teachers invite Indigenous knowledge keepers into the world and what's their practice. But the more I look at the research, I find teachers have been privileged, right? Their practice has been researched, but the Indigenous knowledge keepers, right? We need to privilege those voices. And that is what Connected North is good at, right? I, you know, came on board 2 years ago and I said, perhaps we could have a residence in elder in residence. And, you know, it happened. Perhaps we could consider land acknowledgments. Perhaps we could consider, you know, the recommendations in Truth and Reconciliation. And so many things that happen. There's my 5-minute timer, folks. But yeah, the research.
Jennifer, take another 5. Go for it.
The research, like it's always, I'm looking, am I in the right place at the right time, right? So next month, Connected North has asked me to go to the Yukon. I have 11 Yukon schools that I work with. And Elder Albert Marshall is presented on Two-Eyed Seeing. So our elder talked to you in this session about, you know, living in the two worlds. And that is what our folks are doing. So I'm reading his work and trying to find a way to weave it into my proposal for my PhD studies. And then I get invited to a conference where he's speaking. And I'm like, there's the relationships. That is what Connected North is about, right? So I just finished a jingle dress dancing session. And earlier last year, a student spoke up in the class and said, my kukum made your dress. I didn't know that her kukum, I knew who her kukum was, and I said who made my dress. And then, you know, they come from the back of the class and suddenly they're like, wow, school was all about my kukum today. And how many times do we get to see, you know, students in our classrooms have that feeling of belonging, right? So that's what Connected North is bringing for our students. When I'm looking at, you know, the schools and the population in the schools, you know, 82% of Indigenous students are attending provincial schools, but we're focused on the remote schools because that's where we find the critical need, right? We find, you know, our Indigenous methodologies are important, and the relationship building, talking about, you know, their relationship with the land, instilling their pride, having them stand up and be like, I matter, right? And what my kukum thinks it matters. So that's what we're doing. We're privileging the teachers and their practice. And I'm still finding teachers, and I don't blame them because I am not Inuit. So I don't have a place and a comfort to teach Inuit teachings, right? So when I have a non-Indigenous teacher telling me I don't feel comfortable delivering Indigenous content, I'm okay with that. But I can bring you the resource. let me in virtually through Connected North, and we'll bring you the elders, right? And he's going to come and speak to our students, and Waukomaun can come and drum with you. And we have artists that will come and teach you woodland style art. So many things, right? So we don't have to have like Dion in the research is pointing to the perfect stranger syndrome. So let's let that go, right? Because we're all Canadians and we all have a proud place and a proud future if we let it happen. And that's what Connected North is for me. Every day I wake up and I, you know, get to do so many things with Connected North. My supervisor, Paul Berger, he started way back when with Inuit research. And I went back to him when I was ready to do my PhD. And I said, and I'm now working with Connected North and it's virtual learning and we're in all of the Nunavut communities. And he said, yeah, I will supervise your research. So I'm grateful to the people and the opportunity. I asked Jennifer Corriero, you know, I always had a goal set in mind to do my PhD. And I think the work I'm doing at Connected North, I can weave it in. So I'm privileged. I don't have to turn off my thinking hat when I'm at work or when I'm at study, right? It's all this great, big, wonderful circle for me. So I say miigwech for you, for listening and being a part of, you know, all the researchers. And I ask you to do your work, right? Take a look at Absalom and her book. You know, Marie Batiste, she was writing when I was in my master's and she's still doing good work. Sean Wilson, right? So these are the resources in my library. And my daughter is a scholar too. She's at Nipissing University and she studies in criminology. So she's finishing up her undergrad. And she takes some of my books. So some of them are not here, I'm noticing. But, you know, why do we have to be the toughest Indian in the world? Let's not let that be where we stay, right? Let's be, you know, a place where we're welcomed and we have rich interactions and we're actively engaged in all the things. So I'll leave you with that, just some food for thought, and we can always chat more. Miigwech.
Miigwech, Jennifer. Thank you so much. This is an exciting moment to have been able to listen to all of you. And for this last segment of our series today, I am going to share a few stats and then we'll have some conversation, and Harvey, you might just get a chance to ask some questions. I just wanted to highlight a couple stats related to things we track behind the scenes around the scale of the program. So last school year, we had 359 active content providers. So that includes galleries and museums, science centers, and individual artists, entrepreneurs, architects, anyone who was asked to deliver a session. And then this school year, we actually have 498. And we ask after every session our content providers about their satisfaction in their experience. And we have an average 90% satisfaction rating. All sessions are linked to Wellbeing, and we have a Wellbeing framework that was developed through a participatory process. And different areas might include links to culture, language, and identity, food and nutrition, arts and recreation, relationship with students and peers, relationship with staff and authority, and 30% of sessions link to fostering a sense of hope for the future. In our teacher survey last school year, our average session rating was 4.71 out of 5, which is amazing. 97% of teachers are satisfied with the variety of content that they can select from. There's now over 2,000 session offerings. And 54% of students say they like coming to school more when they know there will be a Connected North session. And 96.5% of teachers agree that Connected North engages students and contributes to attendance and motivation for learning. That's huge. 900 unique teachers booked sessions last school year. One teacher said, Connected North brings life and excitement to the curriculum and helps us connect with all types of learners. And you can see the way sessions were mapped. We do custom reports. We work with 24 education authorities, and we give reports to school principals, to education directors, and just explaining how they're utilizing the program across different subject areas. Another quote, Connected North has captured my students' interests each session and encouraged further discussion and lessons after the fact. Students are proud of the work they get to do during interactive sessions and eagerly look forward to our next time with Connected North. Our student survey response, so 783 responses as of January 2023, 73% of students feel they learned something new in a Connected North session. 61.4% of students say they are excited about what they learned. So that excitement is the emphasis there. Yeah, quote, Connected North is a good way to learn about things without the person coming all the way up to the location we're at. The speaker always had a good way to explain what they are teaching us. Overall, Connected North is one of the best ways to learn online. And I'll just breeze through a couple of these quotes from student learning. So students are asking about the location of who they're talking to. Like, is it snowing there? What time is it there? They're learning about time zones. They're exploring big ideas, like why is the ocean so cold, in a session with Mote Marine Laboratory. They're investigating things further, like in a session with the Canadian Agriculture and Food Museum, they asked, do you track the cow's ovulation periods? Investigating further, in a session with National Ballet School, they asked, why would animals dance? Or in a session with an Anishinaabe architect, they're asking, how does this connect to the bottom of the bridge? Lots of sessions with Indigenous role models. They're asking about what it takes to pursue a dream. They're asking, when did you start? How long did it take, to write her first novel, to Jill Featherstone from Mispawistic Cree Nation. They're following along. They're asking, how do I sew this? Or is it how it's supposed to sound in a drumming session? They're sharing about themselves. One student said, did you know it's my birthday on December 26th? I love that, because just the fact that they're sharing about themselves and they feel valued, they know they're speaking to someone who cares about them and their birthday. In a Shine Bright Like a Star session, elementary school, what's your favorite thing about space? Caring about the planet, a student made a comment about climate change and how it's sad. A student offering examples of letting go of self-doubt in a session about coping with stress and anxiety, elementary school. Cultural sharing, a student asking about other origin stories and them sharing origin stories about their own, about Raven. Planning for the future, this in a budgeting session, students at the end are asking about how much of a percentage of their income should they put away to save so they can use their savings to start a small business. So yeah, these are just some examples of how we're looking at the impact of the program. I wanted to really leave time for further discussion and reflection, and let Harvey, I'm going to let you ask questions to any of us.
Well, first, huge miigwech to Irene, Jennifer, and Waukomaun. And I think listening to Jennifer outline, you need to walk into two worlds, or the Marshall's two-eyed seeing. And it's so important for us from the South to be able to get a glimpse of the two-eyed seeing of the two worlds. And through your stories, presentations today, you've really open that up for all of us. And I always say we need to get learning below the ears, right? Start learning from the heart, and the longest distance is connecting kind of our brain or mind with our heart. So your stories really touched us. My question is, our concern with our lab is impact that the climate is having on health and mental health. So particularly in regions like the North. And I'm just interested in what you're seeing with the warming, the impact it's having on, particularly on youth. And then I see Connected North is having a marvelous effect on trying to be a positive force there, and the ways that we can work together. And that's including, I mean, Jennifer is a community fellow with our lab, how we, can help with in many ways on the research you're teaching, how we can be helpful to Connected North, and through that to you in the North. So So I guess the question that what are you observing around the impact that climate change is having on youth?
Who's the question to? Any one of us?
Yes, or to all of you, or any of you, yes. You could start, Irene, if you want.
Well, I guess as you were talking, I was thinking that, you know, we in the Northwest Territories have been affected by climate change much faster or more so impact because we're further up north. And when the Bennett Dam was put in place in BC, we seen that big impact where our water on the Great Slave Lake went right down and our rivers started to go down because of the dam in itself. And we've seen so many of the different things, whereas even when the tsunami hit, where our sun started to like rise and set, had even changed, like, and our elders, we watch that and we teach that to our kids to watch, because they still trap. Our kids may not be able to afford to all of them go to Disney World and that, but they still go out on the land in smaller communities, which we call the traditional communities. And they still go out hunting, they still go out fishing, they still go out trapping. And within our schools, we allow that to, like, bringing that more back into the schools so that it's part of learning. And it's also part of, for what I see, teachers who come from the South are not, the orientation is like not just 1 or 2 days, it's like 2 to 3 years before they finally realize that there's the love of the community. We have some teachers that came in for 1 year and have been living here for the last 55 years, and we have in Fort Smith here a principal that retired, and 4 other teachers that retired that came from New Brunswick. One came from Winnipeg and one came from Nova Scotia. And when they came here, they noticed the living is so different, and there's so many trails that they can go out. They can go out hunting, they can go out fishing. They can do these things with the students, and at the same time, they can do it with the community. Once they get themselves more involved within the community and with the homes, that's when the learning begins. Because people who come from the South to come to the North have like so many other things going on within their lifestyles, and that they're totally different from the way we live here. And when they come right down to living on the land or being part of it, they start to see that, living in the South is a convenience. It's very convenient to go to any, like if you want to buy a pair of socks and you want a certain style, you can go to 50 to 60 different stores. You want fast takeout foods, you go to McDonald's or that, like, like everything is really fast and the convenience is there. But when you come here, you're coming to maybe one northern store, one Kaiser, one drugstore, and they don't open all 24 hours. They're open to a certain period of time. They don't open on Sundays sometimes, and so they have to learn to live in a whole different, I guess you could say, not only a time zone but time space. And when I say we had these, we noticed a lot of our changes. When I was talking to with a group of elders in in the elders conference a couple of years ago. And we were telling stories, and I was saying, did you know that at one time when I was very young, I said, when I was traveling from Rush River to Fort Raz, I said, with my grandfather on a boat, that lake is really, really deep. I said, yet I could see the bottom of that water, you know, the bottom. I could see fish, jackfish, big jackfish laying there, and I could see small fish. It's almost, you know, you picture yourself when you have a nice clean aquarium and you have a canoe or a boat up on top, and you're sitting in that boat and you're looking down, you could see the fish, and you could see all it, and even right at the bottom, I said, that's how it was like in 1960. And I said, in 1980, you couldn't see the bottom. 1990, the water was gray or mucky or dirty. In 2000, we were told you shouldn't be drinking straight out of that lake. Whereas before, we used to just take a cup as we're traveling with a canoe or a boat and put it right in the water, and it would be so cool, so cold, even though it was middle of July and the hot sun is down. I said, we can't do that anymore. And now I said in 2020, they're telling us that even our sinks, our faucet water is not pure. They have been putting guck in there with fluoride and all stuff inside there that we were so used to having pure water, pure health, pure air, pure land. We used to grow potatoes that were like this, you know, and one potato could feed a family of 5. 2 potatoes could, like, and if you're frying it up, I said, would fill up a big frying pan. Now our potatoes are just tiny. I said, at one time, I said, did you know when an orange came from the south, you had 1 orange and you had a lot of vitamin C in there. But now it takes 10 oranges from that same place to replace that 1 orange in 1970. You know, so we have been going through a lot of climate changes. It's just only now catching up to the Southerners that all of a sudden it's important. All of a sudden it's, hey, like, you know, we've got to stop this because of convenience, the supply and demand. Out here, when we go to South, we shop, we still shop like I said, 4, maybe 6, shopping carts. And that's 4 to 6 shopping carts. 1 cart is filled for our kids' school supplies. Another one is filled with our kids' clothing and stuff that they're going to be using for first day of school and a birthday or a holiday or whatever. And another 3, you know, like 3 would be groceries that you have a hard time getting in the north. Or like say flour, you're buying a bag of flour for, well, no, let's just say for the water. My daughter came down here and she wanted to buy a 24 pack of water, you know, bottled water. Mm-hmm. She went to Kaiser's and she said, Mom, she said, I forgot. When you're coming, come with at least 6 cases of 24 or even those big, large water bottles, she said. And I said, why? And she said, the 24 bottles that I wanted to buy here was $25.99. Where we buy for 3 something, or, you know, it isn't that much down south. So the price difference, further up north, a watermelon this big, you're paying $110. Wow. A dozen of eggs, you're paying $15 further up north. So when those things start to come together and we say we're walking in the 2 worlds, we are trying to I guess what I'm saying is that climate changes have been happening for so long and so fast that it's now that it's reached the southern part, that we are now coming to a same level to say, yes, this is important, we got to do something. Maybe that would save Canada.
Wow. Jennifer, or do you want to comment, or you're
Sure,
seeing
just to give a quick example, most recently, our arena, we know that hockey is a good outlet, mentally speaking, for our children, and it's something that they enjoy. Being right next to the school, we have, built an indoor facility for them. So we recently got like a project funded for solar panels on that building because, the ice plant, it's a lot to maintain, and it takes a lot to keep that facility running. So, we're trying to find ways to come on board with, renewable sources of energy, and the youth are, at a place where they're writing those proposals, they're writing those applications. That's important to them. They know, they can't leave it all up to just the decision makers. They, they write the letters, and that's all a part of what they do in school, and they think about, decision makers. So when we can get our minds all set together, and growing gardens, my 4-year-old, he pulls the potatoes every fall, and his birthday is in the fall, so that is his his party favors are the carrots and the potatoes, and everyone goes home from his birthday with those gifts. I raised my 2 children when we first came back to the First Nation from the city of Thunder Bay. They were 3 and 4. They're now 24 and 23. But then we lived in a little house with no hydro and no water. And they call that the good old days. And it was a choice on our part to live that way and to teach them the value of water, and that it wasn't just simply flick the switch and the lights come on, So, and when they wanted to run their technology, their television and their games, they had to first go out and gas up the generator and, power up things. And so every source came from a real place, right? And it took work, and, getting the water from the lake. And so we raised them in that way, so they would always appreciate where things come from. So I think that's something we're getting away from, is knowing, how far things travel to get to us, and keeping our seeds, right? So we plant watermelon, and it's critical, because I am not going to pay $130 for watermelon. I don't even want to pay 16. So yeah, we're finding ways to keep old traditions going, right? So those were the things we were taught. We were taught the skill set of, our crafts, and putting the time into our beadwork, putting the time into our quilting, and utilizing those resources. Like the material from the flower bags never went to waste. It always was put back in, so a lot of things we're mindful of before we take them to the dump. Is there another way that we can utilize this? Can we plant our seeds in this little container before it, how many times can we reuse this and be proud of that skill? So that's where we are currently. And I think we need to do more of that, right? I share a story where my daughter's engine light came on, and it's 3 hours to get to the mechanic. And her brother says, oh, plug in this device, use technology, and oh, it's your gas cap's loose. That's what the radar is reading. So
Right.
Tighten your gas cap, avoid the mechanic and the big service call, right? That probably would have been a $600 minimal cost for my daughter had she taken it to a mechanic, right? So yeah, let's always find ways to use the technology. Let's always use, drone technology is the new thing. And we're talking about, our communities suffering flood, suffering drought. And so we're mapping, and we're using drone technology to map our communities and think about safety, think about, large things that are going to affect us. So there's so much to talk about in just your simple question.
Yeah, and Harvey, if you don't mind, I'd like to add on as well. Just the impact that the program can have in student learning when we have this discussion and topic. Oftentimes we don't necessarily, the topic might not be climate change in itself. We might have something for sciences for students in grades 7 and 8 that are talking about the human impacts on our ecosystems and our planet. And when we often think about our students that we're connecting with, that we serve, these are students from primarily remote and northern Indigenous communities. And, just even saying that, they're remote or disconnected, that they don't have a connection to the outside world. Well, through technology, they do have a connection to the outside world. They're now able to access television and the internet, and they're influenced by media and by those connections through the internet or television. But they're also connected in so much more. And that's often when I think students have that aha moment, is when we're talking about the human impacts on our ecosystems. We'll start talking about, we're connecting with Corinne from the Royal Botanical Gardens, and she's talking about the impacts that that industry has had in Hamilton Harbor and Cootes Paradise there, and the invasive species that exists there. And we'll start going down this path of this discussion, and we start discovering that the impacts and the things that are going down here in the south are actually impacting communities in the north. Migration for birds could be impacted or changed because of all of the city lights that they're now being impacted on, and that could impact the migration of these birds for communities that rely on hunting and their seasonal patterns. And now seasonal patterns are changing because of the impact of climate change. I was watching something where caribou might be relying on certain grasses that would only be accessible to them, and because of the melt happening maybe sooner, geese flying north sooner as well might start eating the grass that those caribou might be eating, and then because of the waste that they leave behind, that grass not being able to grow back for those animals to feed themselves. So there's a lot of different impacts. And I think that when we have these discussions with young people, they realize that it's not just they're in a remote northern community, they're actually part of a global community, and the impacts of things that are going down here on the south impact them. And they have it's an opportunity for us to encourage them to stand up and speak and share their ancestral knowledge that has been passed down of what things have been like here a long time ago, and the seasonal patterns that we've seen and the shifts that we're seeing with climate change, and to empower them to voice that and to rely on their ancestral knowledge, and that it is valuable and impactful, and it can have a very important place in leading this discussion moving forward for ways to figure out what climate change and the climate crisis, and or just even to think about how we our daily lives here in the south, how we can change and modify things so that it has a better ecological impact on our environment. In our communities, even though I'm Anishinaabe from Southern Ontario, I think the many First Nation Indigenous communities across, and even Inuit communities across the country and the territories, we all have that sentiment that we think about the next 7 generations. We don't own the earth. We don't own the planet. We belong to the planet, and we have to think about how we belong to Mother Earth and how our impact is here. We're stewards of the land, and we borrow this place from our future generations. And so we need to think about how we take care of the land and maintain it, so that our future generations can have, access to this amazing, incredible place and the gifts of Mother Earth and all that she has to offer and provide for us. And so I'm really grateful that we can have those amazing learning interactions with these young folks and help them lead in that discussion and understand their connection to the global community.
Well, it's so inspiring, and like it's not two worlds, it's many worlds, and actually it's one world, right? And but the connectivity allows the innovation that you're each given the examples, the creativity, and then how the technology would allow, basically to take these ideas and not just help locally, but to take it globally. It's very inspiring. We have time for maybe one question, with about 5 minutes left. Does someone like to ask a question? Put your hand up or just come on the audio.
I have a question for the audience.
Yeah.
And Dahdaleh Institute also raise a hand. We'll hear the question first.
Hi,
Shamim?
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I just had to do the audio since we're at the boardroom. Thank you so much for such a beautiful presentation to all the speakers who joined, and a special thank you to Jennifer for organizing such an amazing event. And I know how much hard work went in from the team as well, so I just wanted to thank everyone on behalf of the Dahdaleh as well. I really enjoyed this presentation, and I really enjoyed hearing the stories of everyone, and most specifically the portion where we've engaged now and hearing your guys' perspectives on how climate change is affecting people. But I really liked the point made by Waukomaun where you said that you guys actually specifically talk about how humans have impacted that climate change that ultimately impacts us in return. And obviously it's not the climate that's just changing on its own. I just wanted to know, like, especially with raising costs and inflation, is there any types of organizations that are kind of working towards fighting this? Like, I was very curious to know, like, and maybe like I'm not very hopeful to hear, but is there any forms of like government subsidiaries that provide any help for this, like especially with resources being so limited in the north? I know as a person coming from the south, it's usually to many people astonishing to hear this, and I'm very grateful to have been able to have been aware of these issues for a long time now, but I am still learning about this. So I was wondering, like, especially with great organizations like Connected North, like, has there been any action towards that? And seeing how, like, with the climate and inflation and everything changing, the costs of these resources and how you guys have to be resourceful on your own, is there any help towards that?
You're like for the Northwest Territories, there are a lot of resources or fundings that you can apply to. You just have to know where to apply to and how to apply to, and be consistent with it if you don't get it. The other thing is that what really helps is that we try to give opportunities to our children to have the technologies in the home, but yet at the same time we teach them when they want something, is it something that you want or something that you need? Like, because you take a look at the phones, like a lot of kids will say, well, I want this new phone because this does this and this does that, or I want this new game because it does this better and does that. But they have an Xbox, a PS2 and a PS4 and all that, and then they're coming up with something else and stuff. And then we say, well, can you give these things away to someone that's in need? Or sell it, like, and give it, and then take that money and then buy it if this is what you really need, not what you want. Because it's a mind of, like, if you want this, you want everything. But if you need it, really need it, then you will take care of it and you'd make use of it, right? So that's one of the things that, and for gardening, there are funding for like different gardening and stuff like that. But you got to remember too, like some of the things that they like the fruits and the and that are only grown in certain environment, like the kiwi and the oranges and you know, and stuff like that. So they you know, they that I think takes a lot of expense too, like, you know, where things are coming in and that. But with the climate changes, like our town here, the Northwest Territories in the last couple of years, and that's even before the fires had set in, we were hotter than Phoenix, Arizona. But it is just for a short time. So I think if we build buildings that would, you know, like we can grow certain things, like, but that would be something for our future to look at and say, okay, maybe if it can't get it over there, we can bring it here. Yeah, but we also have to be aware of not bringing in the invasive things that will be growing down here, you know, and that would take over other things. Right now, with all the fires, we've lost a lot of our berries, our berry patches, like Saskatoon raspberries, cranberries, which is a lifeline for us here, for also our medicinal lifeline too. The grounds of they're still smoldering. I know Jen's seen a few of them when they were coming in. There's still fires underground with the and with the mosses burning. Some places the mosses are, you know, up to 8 feet. And so firefighters are still out there trying to control that. So yeah, they're funding. We just have to be more diligent in finding out where and what to do to save each little community.
Well, excuse me, Shamim. Unfortunately, kind of in Western thinking, we're coming to the end of our time, and I think if we're on Indigenous time, we wouldn't worry about this, but we will again. I just want to see first if Jennifer would want to make a
yeah, I just wanted to share one comment in general, which is a theme of keeping the circle strong that Waukomaun mentioned earlier when he was drumming, and Eileen mentioned about community spirit, and also Jennifer just with the theme of helping one another, and that sense of when it comes to that topic of climate anxiety, specifically that term, where I find the danger to be is internalizing a sense of helplessness or hopelessness. And I believe that it is very important to be rooted in the very simple things, like whatever water we're drinking today, like as Eileen was talking about, like knowing that source and like sending our love to the water and the air. Like we know that the wildfires affects the air that we breathe, and just really considering all of our acts and interconnectedness, how we can act in ways of kindness and in keeping that circle strong, and thinking about, and like I asked myself if I was going to talk the whole time today, and I thought, no, I want to bring people in. And so it's like we all have these different roles, and sometimes our role is to listen more than we speak. And so I just wanted to thank you all for coming and listening today. And the question I had for the group is just not to answer in the moment, but like you took the time to learn about Connected North today, and you're here because you have an interest. And if there's any way that you feel that you can contribute in some way, what is it? I don't know. But just to say you're invited into the circle. So thank you. Thank you, Harvey, for inviting all of us and for giving Connected North partnership, community partnership spotlight as part of this series. We appreciate it.
Thank you. We're going to have to end, but I know Travis had his hand up. He put his question into chat. I wonder if you just might like to read your question. It's much a common question, Travis, and then we will end. Okay.
Sure. So gratitude also for all the great speakers and knowledge shares this past hour. Thank you very much. Really have appreciated it. I'm going to be really brief because I respect your guys' time. I'm from New Wellness Games. We're a Yorkview research group that's working on an Inuit-led CBT and Inuit Kalyumaya Tokungat based mental wellness video game. And we work with many Inuit youth across Nunungat, Inuit Nunungat, and I'm wondering if, from your breadth of experience, obviously with teaching, and again, thank you very much for what was shared earlier. I'm wondering if there are anyone that has any recommendations with regard to how to best connect with Inuit youth that would be interested in mental wellness strategies for their communities, and video games to bolster that effect. Because again, they are the ones leading this project. They are the ones explaining what skills they need in their games. And we're really grateful and thankful to the partners we already have, but we always want to grow our group. So a nice, maybe not super quick question, but I just want to share in case anyone had any answers. I'm also sharing our email now in the chat in case anyone wants to share anything afterward. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks so much, Travis.
And Travis, would you send me a note, because we could connect after this and the work you're doing, and you can collaborate with our. Are you working with Yvonne Boer? I'm trying to.
That's exactly who I'm working with. Dr.
I know Yvonne very well. Yeah. So why don't you send me a note too, and we can follow up with this and with Jennifer and Connected North. So it's a marvelous connection. So unfortunately, we'll have to go. I really wanted to say a huge miigwech to our elder Irene and our knowledge keepers, Jennifer and Waukomaun, and then also a special thank you to Jennifer for organizing this beautiful session, and for really, along with Sarah Farwadi, all three of the sessions we had. And I think we accomplished our broad aim of listening to the Canadian North, and it's through listening that we learn below the ears. We learn from our heart, from our spirit, and our environment. So I just want to thank everyone who joined us today, and may you be well, may you be happy. Miigwech.
Merci,